Thank you, sir. All protocols observed. Kwa majina ni Alfred Ogweno Otieno kutoka kwa jimbo letu kuu la Mombasa. Our learned, mimi namwitaga super professor Honorable Amos wako. Tumekuwa na yeye bila yeye labda kumkasama wasi na certain long journey ya hii process, and you'll allow me to mix also kilugha so that I can express the youth side. Kizungu kidogo ukienda sana, some of us hatujaifocus sana. So as our CC and those who presented already wamefanya, the reality is most of the issues have already been covered, and in fact mimi najua maprofesa hapa vitu nyingi wanajua, si ndio? Sasa mimi naomba tu hivi, we add vitu zenye tuna feel a way to localize whatever they know so that it works up to huko chini. One, we have agreed Mombasa County as is, or coast as a region, is a gateway to the larger part of tuseme ni Eastern Africa yote. Now kumekuwa na debate, mimi nimekuwa nafuatilia issue ya mambo ya central, you know, wanataka kugawanya resources. Tanzania has this, Uganda takes this. Mimi naomba tu hivi, pole pole tu with the time. The experts we are requesting, especially from Uganda, all these other countries, help Kenya. Once we agree on an East African state, let the central bank come to Mombasa, be placed in Mombasa, because that is where the gateway is. That is one. That will be a very well balanced way of ensuring that all the, because bunge siko huko kwingine na wale wengine wamechukua another headquarter. Si tupewe tu central bank na si isikwe Nairobi. Mombasa has to also benefit by being a gateway. Number one. Number two, we must agree on our experts. You have done a great job. By the way, I focus more on the new media, social media. So we follow a lot of the information that we see there. And the reality is the steps that you've taken as a young person, na wapa kongole kwa Kiswahili ya Mombasa ama ni ya coast yote. But also we are requesting hii mambo ya IT or pande yetu ya vijana, we must embrace. We go up, we come down. The future is on matters technology and the focus ya pande ya digital. Let's find a way, because nimesoma about the committees, the way they have been set, and you realize it's kind of the sector ya mambo ya hii yetu sasa iliachwa nje. Please create that space, alafu pia give a coastarian youth hiyo nafasi pia. The head is there. Si lazima mimi personally I can maneuver other ways, but let a coastarian youth take us through the process of making East Africa understand IT issues on matters regulating a lot of other issues. As I'm also concluding, we are some of us who are proposing through the experts. Coast as a region has had issues, especially on matters land. Unajua sasa zingine as a region lazima tuambiane ukweli, and every time we trust the national government will solving the issues to do with land. And I will talk it because mimi nilizaliwa huko Mombasa, so nitafaitia mali nilizaliwa, because nitazikiwa labda huko pia Mungu akipenda. The truth is we can no longer, where vile tunaona issue inaenda, hizi vitu zinaenda, we cannot wholly entrust matters to do with land, especially on, because our countries, different countries have cartels katikati. Na unajua tukosa kusema mimi mtoto wangu ataumia na mimi sitaki hivyo. Sawa? So the reality is, let's find a way, if the East African state or the team uko juu, we can regulate matters to do with land, especially when an international country is trying to do business with a member state. Because Uganda recently kulikuwa na information there are some minerals, and to my surprise, some of the who is who in the movie sector walikuja sana mbio Uganda, and I saw even the president hosting them. Our baba Museveni huko, tunamheshimu, tunampenda. By the way, Ugandans should know Museveni anapendwa sana Kenya. And the reality is this: those people, if for example you are not so good in that line of new media, you won't realize when a cartel amekufikia, just because they are well looking and everything, and they are so good in their cards. So before we realize umeuza nchi yako. So we are just requesting, tafadhalini, involve the youths when it comes to this. As namalizi ile kabisa issue education, ndugu yetu nilikuwa nimetoka nikampata walamu alikuwa anagusia, let us agree at least 20% of certain contents zikuwe common in the whole of East Africa, so that even if we will not get it right, our children can get it perfectly. And mwisho, lakini is not an attack towards our general, our great people. We cannot create a solution with the same minds that created the problem. I think you should understand what I'm trying to mean. Sawa? So thank you very much. And vijana, by the way, you must involve the youth. Here is a must. Sawa, we involve them. Sawa. Asanteni sana. Uganda team, salimieni Cornelius Codet. He's an old man who always supports a lot of youth issues within even our country. Thank you very much. And thank you, our TC.
Thank you. Sorry?
Yes? Yes, sir.
Repeat that point of 20%.
We should agree on a common contents of the education system. The curriculum. At least 20% that if you go to Uganda is common. And border issues. By the way, East African community cannot be strong if our drivers can be crossing over and the reports they bring is different. If those other drivers cross over and they take the reports different, they're the ones who will hold this thing together. So we should find a way of also giving respect to our madereva bwana. Borders mnaumiza watu na lazima changes must be made if necessary. If not, equip the youth. Si hatuna makazi. We'll come there, we'll deal with the borders the way it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, very
Our issue here today is on stakeholders consultation and feedback by this team. And the first issue that was to be discussed is the areas of cooperation under the political confederation. We sat and we thought that anything that has to be put in place must be guided. And therefore, the constitution was our first thing that we thought. That if East Africa is to be to come together, the first thing that we should do is to think about the constitution, the law of the land that prevails over any other. It has to be the umbrella that should guide them and decide on what to do and how much. We thought that it is also always good to say that what gets measured gets done. So if anything is to be done, it has to be given its magnitude. What is the time limit? What is going to be done? Who is going to be done? Who is going to do it? Where is it going to be done? And who does what, why, where, when, and how. That is going to be the process. And therefore, the end result will be anticipated. Number two, information sharing. We are talking about thinking about how people should come together. And therefore, reasoning together, bringing everybody, every stakeholder on board is very, very important. Sharing, of course, has what we call the needs to know principle, so that you don't give everybody information that are not necessary to them. Social, there are pillars that we thought that would have been discussed. Social, health, education, research, and technology. That is one component. The other one is culture, because we thought that any constitution should embrace the culture of the people. Culture is, of course, dynamic. There are things that should be discarded, there are things that should be embraced. Then, the economy of the country. Why are we engaging? Because we have a common destiny. We have issues, we have resources, and one of the greatest resources is human capital. We need to improve on that. Economy should also be embraced on the resources, both natural and human resources. Then, the last part of it is power and authority. Power is a driving force. You know, if you want to move from one generation, from one destiny to the other, we need to have people to guide. Therefore, how do we distribute the power? Those people in the highest authority must be duty-bound. They must be accountable to the people. Of course, in the Kenyan context, power belongs to the people. The Kenya Constitution 2010 clearly stipulates that you cannot do things the way you think. You have to consult the people. So public participation is critical. Number two issue, how should the governing structure of the political confederation be? The highest, we are saying, it could be the East African presidency. And in this, we were saying that let it be rotational. The members, if we have 6 or 7 members, we cannot allow one country to dominate maybe 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 5 terms, and the others are just watching. That cannot happen. People will feel cheated. Therefore, if we have 6 countries and then we have a term of 5 years, then we shall say that this rotation should take 30 years, so that it is 6 times 5 years, so that by the time you go for the next presidency of East Africa, you have moved a rotation of 30 years. Then, number 2, that is the highest rank. Number 2, we shall have the presidency, national presidency. Every country, because you have said we are going to retain, then that president should retain, and that term should also be described, because we are different in different countries. Kenya has a limit, Uganda has a limit, Tanzania has a limit. Therefore, we need to come and think what term, so that you do not take too long as a president, then other people will also feel that something somewhere is wrong. So the third level is the sector, the deputy president. And we were saying, because we want to be inclusive, we were saying every deputy president of every member state is given a sector. What are we saying? The sectors that we mentioned about social, health, education, research, technology, security, and others. All the deputies of the African countries are given to. And those deputy presidents must be in charge of all the countries. They oversee those issues. If it is a question of culture, the president of the republic, deputy president, takes issue consideration of all the interests of the various countries. Of course, we have their deputy president, but there is one who is going to be the overseer. The last one is the sector dealing with the East African community MPs. So that now that becomes the level of the structure. So the East African MPs, then the deputy president, then the national president, and the overall up there in the structure is the East African president. Number 3, what should be done? Modes of decision making by the confederal authority. There are things that we need to be thought, that they must be properly done. Public consultation. We must do wide consultation so that everybody's view is articulated and put on board. That is very, very important. Consultation. Remember, we have said that we are under the rule of law, constitutionality. We create institutions so that these institutions are above human beings, the people, because power belongs to the people, and every person, whether the president of East Africa, is under the rule of law. So public participation is very, very important. Then number 2, stakeholder engagement. You don't just engage, you make decisions, you make resolutions, and these resolutions should not be put on the shelves, because sometimes rules are given, but instead of being implemented, in other words, we should have an implementation authority, so that the policies, the government policies, and resolutions are properly articulated. Then we shall have what we call the parliamentary representation, the ones that come up with what we call the statutes. The statutes are resolutions that are made by the parliament level, they need to be considered. Then, what is lacking in Kenya, and I believe it's also happening in other East African countries, is lack of feedback mechanism. Feedback mechanism. We will give somebody a charge, we charge somebody with a responsibility, but when he goes, he does not come. And when he brings the information, sometimes it's half-baked or it's not inclusive. So we are saying, if you have been charged with a responsibility, make sure you have what we call feedback and feed-forward mechanism. You include, you consult, and then those people who sent you, you give them back the feedback information. So you cascade the information, then you escalate. Then, horizontally, the department must also work in what we call multi-agency approach strategy. Because no man has an island, no man has monopoly of knowledge. No man has everything that decides. So you need to consult other people and you embrace those issues together, and then you make what we call a homegrown solution to the challenges that are facing East Africa. Because for how long? 60 years down the line. And we still have so many issues. The issues that we talked about when we were talking about African socialism at the independent stage. are the same things that are happening 60 years down the line. Something somewhere is wrong. And you cannot continue doing things the same way, getting the same results, and you continue doing it. You need to change the what? Strategy. Even. Issue number 4. What should the governance principles of the Federation? 1, the honesty. We are talking about issues of so many people, billions of people in East Africa. But how do these people behave? Do we have the integrity that it takes? Are they honest? Can we trust them? Because what we are having, the East African community failed because of the mistrust. People lost confidence. And therefore, people are not ready to turn the finger where they tell them to put, and then they want. Yes. So what do you think? We need to put strategies in place. And that's why I say the constitutionalism is very, very critical. So that rule of law must prevail. Rule of law must prevail. Integrity is one. Professionalism is another. Transformational leadership. And we need creativity and innovation. Let us not just do things for the sake. Let us do it because we want to have a transformation. Change. We must change because we need creativity and innovation. We are in a competition. It is not just a question of East Africa. It's a question of Africa. It's a question of the whole world. Because up there, we have the European Union, we have the Americans, and we are in a competition. So, if we put our ideas together, our resources together, then we shall be in a position to compete with other nations. Then, I've talked about participative approach strategy, inclusivity and broad-based kind of information. Sustainable development, that is our ultimate goal. Otherwise, are we doing things for the sake? What is our ultimate goal? Sustainable development. We need to look into that. Then we need to have, I think I have mentioned that, constitutionalism, the rule of law must be, and then we also have to be very careful. Let us have something we call inward looking, so that we are not just saying East Africa should give us this and this and this. The former president was asking, what are you giving to the president or to the government? If you need this and this and this, what are you yourself giving to the government? So we are saying that he who comes in law, he who seeks justice, must come with what? Clean hands. You must come with clean hands. So, equity. If you have to receive something from other people, then come with clean hands, so that everybody becomes clean, rule of law prevails, and you're able to move. Then, finally, in this section, we have what we call the checks and balances. You have the 3 arms of government: the legislature, judiciary, and the executive. And what is their role? Watchdog. They watch over extremes over each other, so that we do not have people who move away from the rule of law and they become super what? Finish. We have people authoritarianism. So, issue number 5, how should the national states relate to other federal authority? 1, they need to share power. And power and authority is something that is very, very sensitive. Power is not something that people would like to share. But they have to be compelled to do that, because it is for all of us. If I have to be part of the system, then I must say that I have some interests. And those interests must be taken care of. If they are not taken care of, then I will feel the mistrust and I will not feel very comfortable. So sharing of power from the highest level to the lowest must feel that surely this is a legitimate government. I was part of it when it was being created, and this institution is taking care of my interests, and therefore I surrender to be under this authority. If you do that, then it will be possible. So power and authority should not be based on the triangle up there. In fact, just like the way we are saying that, let us have a bottom-up approach kind of a strategy, so that it is devolved to the lowest level, so that people will feel part and parcel. The next one is treaties and memorandum, MOUs. If we have to come into an agreement, let us have agreements that are going to be binding. You know, there are things that we may happen and they are not binding, and therefore you are not duty bound. Let us come up with the experts who are going to put it in a constitutional way, so that anybody who does not live as per the rules, then something must happen. Let's have institutions that have teeth to bite, so that nobody exercises extremes. 6, how should the operations of the Confederation Authority be funded? Number 1, we are saying that members must contribute. Because if you are the ones who are creating the institution, then we need to donate something so that we can have that institution operational. So contribution from the member states. Number 2, donation from partners. We have several other partners, not just the nation states. We have other partners. You have the United Nations. You have monetary funds like IMF. You have so many other national and international partners. Those are the people. We can have grants and loans from other people and even individuals. Nation states and even countries can also donate. We have people who are also wealthy. They can donate something to the federation, to the institutions. Finally, income generating investments. We have institutions. Even the government normally have the what? The state corporations. So we can also have East African corporations. Then we have some institutions that are going to generate investment. Number 7, show how should the constitution establish the political confederation be adopted. Number 1, you can have referendums. We can have parliamentary debates. We can have assessments of members, presidents, so that those articulated issues can be looked into, and then they are debated, and then a homegrown solution out of the challenges. That's what we call business reengineering. If you look at what has happened in the past since independence, and then you are able to see what is happening today, you can be in a position to predict what is the likely possible things to happen in the future. So right now, we have been able to see that we cannot go very far when we are at the individual level, isn't it? That is why we are saying, put things together, let us reason together, then come up with a homegrown solution by looking at our challenges, then we can predict the possible outcome. But we are also saying the constitutionalism is very important. Those people who have read literature, Chinua Achebe says, if the center does not hold, what happens? What happens? Things will fall apart. So we have to be very careful. East African community fell because of certain issues. Before we move again into the federation, let us look at the past, see what worked and what did not work. Then look for solutions to what worked and what did not work. We come up with a homegrown solution. That is going to be a very, very clear picture that we shall not fall again. Finally, number 8, any other issue proposed by stakeholders to be addressed in the Constitution of East African Political Federation. How do we go about that? National and regional visions. Kenya, we have talked about what? Vision 20? Then we also have the African Agenda of 2063. Then what else? We can have several, even East African visions and missions. Because if you don't dream, then you are not going to achieve anything. So we must dream. And not just dream. You know, some people will dream in a pipe dreams. We don't want pipe dreams. We want to dream big, and then you look at what you are likely to achieve. But when you bring everybody on board, then you are able to think loud and clear. Then you put your things in a very clear, simple, clear, and straightforward language, so that everybody understands what you intend to achieve or to do. So that these people, the Constitution should be very clear. I'm happy what somebody said. Let us translate our Constitution in English, Kiswahili, and French. Right. Why? So that the community, the common man, mwananchi, will understand what you are talking about. Otherwise, some languages are only understood by the lawyers, isn't it? So to them, and to me, that is not going to be homegrown solution. It is going to be lawyer-based. it is that they think is best for us. And that could be the reason as to why it failed. They did not consult Wajiko and what? Fatuma and Charo. They did not consult that. If they consulted, maybe that Fatuma would have given a very good opportunity. Then lastly, we are talking about enforcement of security. Policies and government ideas are very good, but sometimes if they lack an enforcer, if they lack an enforcement entity, then they might not go far. So East Africa should not be toothless. It must be a created institution that should govern, that should say this is what should be done, and this is how it should be done, and this is how much. They also give it a time frame, because you cannot afford to do things forever. You can only do things given an opportunity, and there is a time limit, so that a structure is created very well, and then you operate within confines of law. So finally, cooperation in research and technology. We are not living in the past. We want to look at the future. We want to be futuristic. Once we are futuristic, it will be possible for you now to jump from this level to the next level. So creativity and transformational ideas, very, very critical, so that we move from where we are. Maybe soon we shall not be talking about East Africa. Let us think about Africa as an entity, as an institution, so that we are able to compete with Europe. We are able to compete with America. We are able to compete with Asia. In fact, let me tell you, the greatest resource is not in Europe, it is in Africa. So all you need to do is to think. And the biggest university, I think, the earliest university was not found in Europe, it was found in Africa. Alexandria hapo. So kama sisi tuko na resources na tuko na knowledge, ni nini ambayo inatusumbua? Yes, corruption, identify it. Now, poor leadership, identify. What else? What else? Ukabila. Watu hawezi kukaa pamoja. Na ile ambayo labda hata kuna ingine ambayo me, myself and I, you do not share resources with other people. And God has given us enough for all of us. So what has happened with all of the enough that God has given? Selfishness is what is killing us. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Clarification on the issue of deputy president. I understood about the presidency, rotational, 6 member states, 5 years each, which means 30 years, everybody you have gone through. Now, but at the level of now deputy president, I just want a clarification there, because you say that each deputy president in the country will be given one sector. Maybe one will be given health, yes. Another will be given education, another one some, like that. Now the clarification I'm now seeking is that if you have a head of state, say from Uganda, and then you have deputy presidents of the 6 member states, each given a sector, does it mean that the deputy president in every state will also be not just a deputy president of the country where he is deputy president, but will be a deputy president also of the federation in charge of a sector? And if that is so, will it not create some conflict that here you have a deputy president, say from Tanzania, who is also the deputy president of the federation, say in charge of health? Will that not create a conflict between him and his own president, who is just a president of Tanzania? Yeah, that's a clarification I wanted to.
Thank you.
Secure.
I wanted to say that the president maybe sits in the summit. And when he sits in the summit, there are policies that he makes. those policies must be implementable. They must be implemented. So the deputy who is his deputy now takes over the policies that have been made at summit level and is able to be implemented. So that deputy president now becomes an overseer. He wants to ensure that what the president deliberated and agreed on in the presence of other presidents are properly articulated and implemented. So he does not make other policies because they have already been made by the president and the summit. His role, the role of the deputy, is to oversee the implementation strategy. The way the deputy governor has been given the role. The role of the deputy governor is not to make resolutions, is to ensure that the departments at the county level are implementable and they have been given timelines and they go by the timelines given. Thank you.
The team of constitutional experts who are working on the drafting of the constitution for the East African Political Confederation, Honorable Retired Justice Bernard Udoke, our Honorable Retired Justice Amos Wako, our beloved legal expert, of whose stories we can tell on and on and on. Our esteemed dear colleagues, represented here by County Government of Kilifi, the Madam Deputy Governor, my colleague commissioners, and all our esteemed colleagues from all representation, that is persons living with disabilities, women representatives, the youth, the religious organizations, and all the experts that we have in the house, including the educational fraternity. Mine is to say, I don't know whether it's still morning or good afternoon. I'm the County Commissioner Taita Taveta. My name is Josephine Anunga. Mine will just be just to tell members here. But first of all, we want to thank our leadership in the East African community for this very, very noble, important agenda. And we are happy that we are back on track. East African community agenda to have a federation, or rather to have a joint common platform for trade, for governorship, for among many agendas, was an idea that was hatched, as we have been told, many years back. And fortunately or unfortunately, we have not been able to work within the time frames that had envisaged by our founding fathers, who had already had this agenda in their mind. So all I want to say that we are saying this is very timely and very important to us. And first of all, we are happy that we have come down to the grassroots. The discussion has started, the agenda is on, the program, the work plan is moving. But I'm happy that for the first time we are here on the ground to let Kenyans, or what we call public participation, so that we bring on board all the stakeholders in this particular agenda, whose lives are touched, or who will benefit greatly if the objective of this agenda is met, and who form a very critical force that impacts a lot on the success of this particular agenda. Africa is one of the richest continents in the world, isn't it? One of the richest. It is the richest. Thank you. Kumbe mnasikiza, you have not left. Africa is one of the richest. The richest continents in the world. However, it's also one of the poorest. Am I right? It is richest in terms of resources. We have resources that have never been harnessed or have not been fully exploited in whichever region you go in Africa. We have minerals all over Africa that are harnessed by other people other than Africans to benefit other nations and entities in other continents. We have the best and the richest culture in the world. that can help us have a very robust tourist attraction around culture, that can employ our young Turks in the area of film, art, and other innovative programs for the youth in our country, not properly harnessed. Today, when you see young people dancing around tourists, they do that not because they're happy to do it, but because they are frustrated and they have no other means of getting their resources or employing themselves. So we have the youth who are very talented. However, because of challenges of employment, they end up even not exploiting their talents because of some of these challenges. Number one is culture, because if you expound on our culture and you look at our culture is a very rich source of employment if properly harnessed. We have challenges of unemployment in our region. We have challenges, we have the best agricultural lands in the world. Africa has the best agricultural lands. But we have not done a lot with it. We have not planned it. We have not phased it out. We have not professionally utilized our agricultural land. We have the best human resource and brains in the world. You go to other regions in the world, you get the best professors, the people who've done roads, the architects of the best roads in the world come from Africa. The roads in Britain and many other countries out there. We have professors in any field, name it, coming from Africa. We have expertise, very great expertise of our youth. Anywhere you travel, you cannot miss an African, and especially an East African. Let me come back home, an East African. So what are we saying? That we have very rich professional human resource that we have not tapped. And I think this is one of the areas that we can use to see how we can harness, first of all, create a very good database and harness all our critical resources that can spur this East African Community Federation to the agenda where we want to take us. Because we want to be industrialized. I'm sure that is part of the discussion. We want to be industrialized, we want to develop, and we want to do great things for the citizens of the East African community. And finally, like I said, we have the best tourist destinations in the world. In the world. We don't have winters. Do we have winters? We don't have these extreme vagaries of the weather. God has put us in one of the best continents in the world, but we don't celebrate it. Wazungu wanakuja mbio sana wakati wa winter. They want to enjoy the sun in Africa. What have we done about it? All the way from Indian Ocean, we have the nice beaches, we have the wildlife inside the parks, which God has given us. We have a lot. All the way up to DRC Congo. Very rich cultures, very rich tourism sites, among others. So I will not say much because I want the people of Taita Taveta to be heard, but I want us to use also this opportunity and this forum to look at East Africa community, or rather East African nations, in terms of resources. Let us look at ourselves in terms of resources. We have great, enormous resources. We talk of unemployment, we talk of many other challenges, challenges of insecurity which arise from either challenges in our governance structures, among others. Let us look at what God gave East Africa and how. My brother talked about a lot of issues around governance issues, ethics, and all the values and virtues that we have. When we walk out of here, what will be our agenda for the East African community? We want a federation. So that we've had this story, but we want a federation of an East African community that can be developed, can chase the first world, and it is possible, because I don't know whether we're middle income as a region. As a country, we are growing towards middle income, but as a region, where are we? Let us think about the East African citizens when we talk about federation.
My name is Mokogizo Ali from Kwale, the president of the Kwale Youth Assembly, and was very much interested in the youth inclusion and participation, especially on the political federation. Mine was how do we include young people in this federation? And when you look at right now, we have democracy, but looking at the restrictions, the young people are not actively involved in this process. So I'll just be brief. And on this matter, we are proposing that the institution integrate or anchor establishment of a youth either assembly, legislative, or a council that can be used to streamline the youth programs or the youth affairs. And the other issue, we have the problem of the public participation. It was anchored in the Constitution, but looking at the participation in the PFM Act, it doesn't say how many people we can say now this is public participation. So we have that tokenistic inclusion. So we have to say what quorum we say that we have included the young people, or this is now a forum that is a public participation. How many people? Is it 100, 20, 50? So there's that crisis in the public participation, and we wish that this be addressed in this federation. So our proposal is that at least 1/3 of it be used for that quorum to be. Another thing that we have to look at is the political differences. We have differences, we have our culture as a country. So we have the issue of multi-party democracy in Kenya. The other countries don't have that, maybe. We have to address the issue of electoral bodies. We have IBC. Our system is technology. The other countries are using a manual. We have to address the issue of freedom of speech. In our country, unajua, we have the Kenya on Twitter. They can even arrest you on that Twitter. So how do we address that? In other countries, we are not allowed even to address an issue. That's part. We have to address that issue. We have issues of security and peace. Our country here can say there was that peaceful transition from one government to the other. In other countries, chaos. So how do we welcome that and we accommodate that? Another issue is the issue of demonstration. In other countries, if you demonstrate, nafungwa. In our country, even people are free kwa kichwa, and there's no problem. So we have to address this issue in that. Another very important issue I would like this to check is the issue of election. Election of our leaders in this legislative assembly is like it's a party inclusion or a coalition. We have Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. But how do we know that is a mbunge from an East African community? So right now it's just party MPs. They don't represent the people. So thank you very much, and I'd like to end there. Asante sana.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good. We almost missed that. Those are very serious voices, and experts are listening. They'll know how to put it. Yes, from the county of Kwale.
Kwale.
Very well.
Hamjambo tena. Hebu kwanza nishukuru mwenyekiti kwa kupata hii nafasi ndogo. Mimi naomba niongelee juu ya biashara kwa sababu mimi kwa jina langu naitwa Mwanzuga, Jafet Mwanzuga, natoka Kwale na represent Chamber of Commerce Kwale, na hapo pia mimi ni mfanyaji biashara. Lakini kabla hatujazungumza mambo yote, kwanza tumeenda mbele zaidi tukaacha mambo na cross borders. Kwa mfano nchi jirani hapa Tanzania, unajua sisi tuko karibu na Tanzania, lakini kuna shida ya wafanyaji biashara. Unakuta Kenya ililuze mambo ya biashara, Mtanzania anao nafasi ya kuleta machungwa, mananasi na biashara nyingi kutoka kule kuleta hapa. Lakini Mkenya ni ngumu kuchukua biashara hapa kupeleka kule, there is a lot of restrictions. Kwa hiyo kwanza tuangalie mipaka vile tunavyofanya biashara. Kama hii nchi ni moja, si ufike pale kuna bwana mmoja amesema ukifika unaambiwa na gonga unaenda kuishi siku ngapi. Ni makosa sana kama sisi watu wa moja tupewe ile freedom of crossing the border, ufanye biashara yako na usizuiwe. Juzi tulikuwa na mkutano wa wafanyabiashara pale Lungalunga kwa sababu Chamber of Commerce inasimamia wafanyabiashara. Lakini lalama kubwa tumepata ni kwamba hawaruhusiwi kwenda kuuza vyombo vyao kule soko la Tanzania, lakini Watanzania wanaruhusiwa kuja kufanya biashara yao hapa, ambayo ni makosa. Hii nchi ni moja, East Africa, kwa hivyo watu ni wamoja na mambo ya dini yawe mamoja. Asanteni sana.
Kwa majina naitwa Mheshimiwa Manuari, MCA wa Bofu. Zamani kilugha ya kule Tanzania, zamani tunakuwa tunaitwa makonsela, siku hizi tunaitwa MCA, mwakilishi wa wadi. Mimi niko na maneno mawili tu ambayo nimesikiza tangu mwanzo lakini sijayasikia. One, masuala ya boda. Pale boda kuna lugha huwa inazungumzwa. Sisi kama wa East Africa, unataka kutoka Kenya kuenda nchi nyingine, unaulizwa utarudi lini. Unajua ni sawa tuseme niko Kenya, natoka Mombasa naenda Kilifi, alafu nifike pale niambiwe utarudi lini Mombasa. If we want to be a one community, East African community, hii swali to amend kama iko katika sheria kuwa ukivuka uulizwe utarudi lini, tuiweke X. Iwe nikienda naenda, nigongewe tu nimeenda na ninarudi. Kama vile tumechange tukaweka boda ni moja, lazima tubadilishe na hii. Second, kuna hii masuala ya vipi tutafund mwelekeo wetu wa umoja wetu. Sisi kama East Africa, mmoja amezungumza akasema we have several resources. Yes, we have. Tuko na long strip ya blue. Hii blue Wachina wametoka kwao wamekuja kwetu kuvua samaki, wanakuja kutunzia sisi wenyewe. How comes tunauziwa samaki wetu wenyewe na tunachukuliwa sisi wenyewe ndio tunakwenda vua, alafu tunatumiwa sisi kuja kuuza samaki wetu? Let's empower our vijana na kama East Africa tuamue tuwe na boti zetu za East Africa, tuempower vijana, tuwafundishe vile kuvua samaki. Tununue samaki instead ya kuja kujiuzia, tulete wale tutakula mboga na wengine tuwapelekee tuwauzie wao. Tuko na minerals, hizi madini. Tanzania wako na zao zinaitwa red nini zile red diamond na whatever. Kenya we have it. Kama pale kwetu Likoni pale kuna titanium inaletwa, inapakiwa kwa meli inapelekwa huko. Kwa nini tusiwaambie wao tufungue kampuni ndani ya East Africa, zile madini zetu watufundishe kutengeza ile chuma itufae sisi wenyewe, at least ile kitu tunatengeneza tukienda kuuza ifacilitate masuala ya East African community. Hizo ndio vitu niko nazo tu kwa sasa. Asante sana.